Thank you both for your talks on digital accessibility. Yes, that's right. We are now going to be passing over to the audience for questions. Just a reminder that you can either use the raised hand function. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says reactions, and then you can choose the raise hand function, and I'll be monitoring that, and I can unmute you, and then you can ask your question directly. Or if you would rather not appear on the recording, then please type your question in the chat and I can ask it on your behalf. Just while we
Nice, and can I just jump in there as well?
sorry,
Nice.
yeah.
That was another point. Introducing multiple ways of interacting as well, incredibly important. So just in the way that you've done that just there, Rebecca, is perfect because you've given people the option to speak or to type. So some people might be more comfortable with one or the other. So giving that alternate option for how you engage is perfect.
Yes, while we're waiting for people to ask, that leads me on to a question of my own. I was wondering whether overall, because of all these different features, are online events more accessible than in-person events? For maybe both of you, but perhaps Jamie, you could answer this one first.
Well, I literally just came straight from a live stream on making events accessible and engaging as well as part of the NCCP. What I would say is, at first, people were scared. I heard so many conversations about people saying how we were excluding people and there was online, digital exclusion. These were the prevalent conversations at the start of lockdown. They are valid, but also I think a lot of them came from our own worries and fears about our own abilities. I think the online world has the potential to remove geographical boundaries. It can potentially be more accessible to people with caring responsibilities. I think there's no set answer. There's always going to be a place for in-person. There is also a place for online. I think accessibility measures online can really, really help. I think people that have traditionally been excluded have been able to be included online. We're choosing different demographics to exclude now. That's what I would say. I'd be curious of what Sarah would make of this as well.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. That doing stuff online does mean that we can reach people who have. So when I had small children, I couldn't go to anything because you can't take a small kid to a conference. So it improves accessibility for working people with caring responsibilities. But if you only have one phone between the five of you in your house and it's not your turn to have it, then you can't access the outreach event that somebody's running. So it's sort of double-edged. It should definitely be part of our armory. Definitely.
Thank you. We've got a specific question here from Charlotte in the chat box for Jamie, and she asks, "What is your opinion on the accessibility of platforms other than Zoom, such as Hoppin?"
Yeah, a great question. So Hoppin, if you're not familiar with it, is a kind of newer conference platform that's being rolled out. I love Hoppin, but so just recently we're deciding with the NCCP where the Engage conference would be. Would it be on Hoppin, which looks fancy, very slick, lots of functionality, but no subtitles, which was problematic. And this is something that they were really committed to providing in their sessions. So there are downsides to Hoppin. As soon as Hoppin have live captioning available, I think I will jump straight into that platform because it is fantastically good. But the flexibility of Zoom with the easy to use live transcription and even the translation feature, should you need it, and I've used that for a few international sessions, just now Zoom still wins out on accessibility versus Hoppin.
Thank you. Sort of also on the theme of accessibility of these online platforms, Sharon wonders if you know an AI style signing app for videos in real time if you don't have access to a translator who can sign.
Oh, Sharon, that is such a dream. It's like, what would you really like to improve accessibility? And it's exactly that. I don't know of any available. Do you, Jamie?
I don't, I know, but it'd be absolutely fantastic.
No, I mean, sometimes if you've got an event, you might have a local signing school that might come and help you out a bit, but it is a skill, and it is something that is it's a paid job. It's you can't expect people to come and do it for nothing. So it's something you need to build into the budget for your event if you think you need it.
You might also be able to get funding for your event for something like that. For example, not to plug us, but the SUB, we have a diversity fund. And so you can apply for money to, for example, get a sign language translator for your event. I'm sure other people will be doing the same. There's a question from Elizabeth that says, do you know of any specific training sessions available on this? I'm not sure who that was for, but I guess for both of you, do you have specific training sessions about what you're each working or what you both discussed?
So Jamie, do you want to plug yours first?
Yes, I'm not running any individually ticketed training sessions just now, so it tends to be university or institution specific. So if you do feel there's a bit of a gap, then it's always worth plugging. So you can say, well, I do run courses on online engagement and things like that. They're on my website, so if you're interested, you can see what I run. And the best way of having that happen at your institution will tend to be either through the public engagement team or the researcher development team. Every now and then I do run individually ticketed sessions as well, though, but I'd get in touch with your organization and say, I came across someone that sounded like he could talk about these kind of things. Maybe we could bring them in. And also Sarah runs lots of training as well, so Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, so much like Jamie, well, I mean, Jamie does run individual sessions as well, so that you can join in, but I don't do those. So I mostly work directly with university departments with their outreach groups or specific groups who are starting work on a new project and they've got funding through a grant, but they're all working towards making things more accessible for children with special needs and disabilities.
Thanks both. Sarah, I have a question for you. I was wondering, how did you get started working with children with special needs?
So in the village sort of next to where I live, there is a special needs school which has a nursery. And when I was looking for somewhere for my children to go to nursery, I chose the nursery at the local special needs school, which is an inclusive nursery, so it takes mainstream children as well, because I wanted my children to grow up knowing that there are all sorts of different people in this world. So they went to nursery with people and just grew up with people who were non-verbal and had a range of different impairments. To the extent that when my youngest started primary school and a child in his class had an epileptic fit and the teachers were really worried, my youngest, who, you know, he'd just turned 4, explained to the children that you didn't need to worry about them, they'd be absolutely fine. And they explained what a fit was because they'd seen it before and all of that. So from my children knowing a range of people and me knowing those children's parents and knowing the school staff, when they found out I was doing science in mainstream schools, they said, come and do some for us, come and do some for us. So that's pretty much how I got started, by knowing individuals and knowing what would work for them, and then through experience of working with more and more people, developing from there.
Thanks, really interesting. Yeah, I think that's a lovely idea to introduce your children at a really young age to a range of different people from different backgrounds, just on a nice human level.
We're just very lucky the nursery was on our doorstep as well.
Yeah.
And just on that as well, just where I started, so I worked for a long time with a visual impairment charity, and when I first started working with them, I had no experience of kind of consciously working with people with visual impairment, and it was extraordinary. It was just a mindset shift. As soon as you get into the mindset of thinking, how is this accessible or inclusive, you start to see so many little problems. And one real moment of clarification was me. It was my first day working for a visual impairment charity, and someone came up to my desk and said, "Oh, Jamie, you've left your bag down at the side of the table. Can you put it underneath the table?" And I couldn't believe how stupid I'd been. Obviously, you know, there was people with zero vision and I'd left an obstacle in the path and I hadn't thought about it. And it was just, as you start to think, okay, what does the world look like? How do we start to make this inclusive? And I think as soon as you start thinking that way, you start to see so many other areas that you can improve on.
Yeah, I think that's true. That it's like a snowball effect, isn't it? You see one thing and then suddenly it all sort of clicks. There was another question in the chat that I see you've answered, Jamie. It was just about which live streaming platforms are easiest to integrate, and you've answered that with Restream. Is it?
Yeah, so I use Restream. A lot of other people will use StreamYard. They are really basically the same thing. They're websites which allow you to live stream to different social media platforms.
Perfect, thank you. So hopefully that will help some of you.
So I'd actually, sorry, I've got one thing to add to something that Jamie mentioned about when you're asked to send slides over before you do a presentation, something which Jamie probably does without thinking about, but it's when you've written your slides to go through and make sure you've added alternative text to all of the images and gone through the accessibility settings so that it reads the frames in the right order. Just so that anybody picking that up with a screen reader actually hears something that makes sense.